This is number 13 in a study that we've entitled Angelic Sightings and Activity Dispensationally Considered. Now, before we get into this review, I'd just like to say something this morning when I talked about the kids. Now, mind you, ever since I've been saved, I have had a ministry around children. I've been a youth pastor in several churches, and we've had countless camps and daily vacation Bible schools. I traveled with Leland Meckley, and experience in those areas is, I could write books and volumes because of so many. There were a lot. And that has brought me to a point in my life when I can pick them out, as you say, very quickly. In other words, before it even happens, I know what kind of kid is going to do what and where. And so I nip it in the bud. You can ask our educators and so forth. You can see them. It's written on their foreheads. It's in their eyes as to exactly what's going to happen. Whenever we've had visitors here and brought the kids in, I noted that the kids jumped on the church pews, pulled out the hymn books, and started ripping the pages. Well, you'll excuse me, but I disciplined my kids. I spanked them. You don't destroy other people's property under rule of dad. I don't care if police get you. You're going to answer to me when you destroy someone else's property. And there was nothing said. Okay, and several other things happened with regard to food and running away from parents and bringing them up here. And then during children's church, somebody said, "Did something happen?" And yes, I saw a little head come shooting in there. And Stan told me that they shot into Stan's office and hid underneath Stan and went shh like this. Next thing I saw was Miss Betty coming up there, shooting upstairs to get him. See, that's an absolute no-no. Everybody is welcome here. You don't misunderstand me. Everybody is welcome. However, just like with any other business, school, or organization, there are rules. And if parents aren't going to correct them, now here's what will happen. They'll destroy the property and we'll have to pay for it, double, triple, because you don't correct them. Or then if the pastor says something, he's a mean ogre. He just doesn't like kids. And it's not that. It's just, I don't like parents who do not correct kids when they destroy property. And then if the kids are not going to be made to mind, later on, those are going to be the kids that will vandalize your house. And you're the one who says, "Ooh, that pastor was an ogre because he got on to kids destroying church property." Then he destroys your property. He breaks your windows, flattens your tires, keys your car. And then it's a different story, isn't it? Because it's your property. It's your business. And the fact of the matter is, this is where I work. My career is based on how we present ourselves here. And to get people with standards, people who are going to care about property and with standards and contribute their money and come here faithfully. And the first thing will happen, I've been there. I can tell you what happens. Somebody who doesn't put anything in the collection plate has kids who rip up everything. And then somebody who has standards comes into the church and they open the same hymn book that the kid destroyed and said, "I'm not coming back. These people don't have any standards. They don't take care of their property." And then they don't come back, and they have the potential of supporting the church, and the ones who don't tear up the property. And you know what I have to say to that? I could say something to be very undignified to my career and profession, but I would just simply say, nuts to that, phooey on that, baloney to that. And you get the idea. And it simply means we all love all of us, but there is a responsibility. And that's why I say everyone's welcome, but there are some ground rules here. Okay, and because here's another thing that happens. People come and destroy a church, And because they have invested no money in it and virtually no time or any sweat and blood, they destroy a church, and then they go down to the next church because the next church is nicer and they offer bigger donuts and bigger pizza and so forth. And I've been there. I've done that. These bones have both years and mileage on them, and so that's why I say one more thing while I'm on this subject. Diane and I went down to Alpha, Kentucky on business with Lee Hamoki just this past weekend. And Lee never did show up because his brand new diesel-pushing motorhome broke down in Florida. And anyway, they had another guy there that spoke. Lee was supposed to be there by Saturday. We went down there to the Old Bethel Bible Church, and it was nice enough on the inside. But during the service, they had no nursery, they had no children's church. During the service, as the guy was preaching, guess who he was competing with? 2 babies. And the louder he got, the louder they got. I'm not kidding you. I mean, it was as though the kids knew, hey, Buster, you're not going to outshout me. And he would, get loud, and they would scream. And the whole service, they screamed and carried on. Passed back, excuse the phrase, we're in a Kentuckian church there. And we sang every stanza of every song we sung, and we sung a lot of songs. And we sang them all through our nose, and we sang every single stanza. And then we passed the kid from mom to the oldest daughter to the sister and they were all screaming all the way up and down. It was chaos. But then, after the service, we should have never even met. It was a waste of time, an exercise in futility. But after the service, nobody corrected any of these kids. And they had doors off to the side there. The whole group of kids moved up to the platform. Now, they had microphones, some good equipment up there, piano and the like. And the kids would run and slam I'm talking slamming the doors. Now, if another kid would have got up there and they slammed the fingers in the door, who would have been to blame, don't you? Why didn't somebody do something about that? And I want to tell mom and dad, why don't you do something about it and say to your kid, hey, we don't do this at home. You don't do it at school. We don't do it at church. And then they were running up and down the aisle and with this expensive equipment, hitting it, banging on the piano. And then a guy puts on a cape, a Batman cape of all things. He puts on a Batman cape, and there are a couple steps on the platform, and he's dive bombing the kids off the platform wearing this Batman cape. And there wasn't one parent or one adult that said, hey, we don't do that. Well, anyway, I don't take blood pressure medicine, but I had to take some. I invested in Maalox because all of it, and there was a good crowd there. But all of it was wasted time, all because there was no discipline. And I ask this question because, we say, hey, God's interested in people who are movers and shakers. And I say, is that true? When Jesus Christ came to earth, whom did he call? Disciples. And what does a disciple mean? Disciplined one. He doesn't want movers and shakers. He wants disciplined people. You see, disciplined people will organize their life to get something done. But all of this other business is just nonsense. Anyway, it wasn't my service, and it wasn't my church, and it wasn't my property, but I still had a royal hissy fit on the inside. It's a wonder I didn't have a stroke because I know my blood pressure was up. Now, I said all that to say this. Systematic Bible study requires the discipline of a classroom. Could you imagine? I mean, we have school folks here. Could you imagine? Here is an 8th grade class. Well, maybe we should make it just a little older, but the girl has gotten pregnant, and she comes to class with her baby. Do you think that would ever fly in a school classroom? That would never fly. What are you talking? The teacher would say, wait 1 second. In the first place, you have that baby there, and all the other little girls around there are going to be what? Ooh, what's its name? Isn't it cute? And what's going to happen? It's got to be fed. It's got to be watered. It's got to be changed. Well, hey. That's you got to have water for children sometimes. Well, I better proceed. It would never fly. So what I'm saying to you is that in a local church, the same conditions must be had. Now, of course, if you have visitors, we are patient people. If you have visitors, we are kind, and we want to help because we want to give them the word, we want to get them saved and to grow up and the like. However, there is a certain amount of time that must be given to protecting the rights of other people for learning the Bible, and then secondly, the rights of other people in their investment in property. Okay. I done preached enough. I didn't notice, though, that when we went down to Kentucky, I had to talk a little slower to folks. No, just joking. Okay, that's just a joke. Okay. Angels. There are 3 dispensations here. And we looked at these this morning. 2 dispensations in which angels changed to men. The dispensation of conscience, there were good angels represented by this yellow circle that changed to men for the express purpose of testing human women. Of course, these women fell, and we now know that the dispensation of conscience ended in the Noahic flood. These angels became visible. And, when there are people today who say, are there really such things as angels and the like? All you have to do is go back in Bible history and you will see that there are angels who were visible, angels who actually became men, and they tried to corrupt the seed of humanity so that Jesus Christ could not come as the seed of the woman, the promise God gave in the dispensation of innocence. Okay, then we noted the next dispensation, the only 2 where angels became visible as men. There are other dispensations where they became visible as angels. But where an angel took on the form of men to test human men. This was in the dispensation of promise. And they did this, they retained their sinlessness. These angels did not. They became men for the express purpose of cohabiting with women. They left their first estate. Here they left their first estate under divine permission to test the human men at Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, it was just after God had said, in Isaac will your seed be called. And therefore, here, to make sure that there were purebred human beings on earth, to corrupt the human seed, God destroyed all the flesh but 8 human beings. And here, God destroyed all of the homosexuals because here they could corrupt the seed. Here, they could corrupt Isaac. If Isaac turned to be a homosexual, what's going to happen? There will be no seed. They were assertive, they were aggressive, and they went after these angels, and Lot even offered them his 2 daughters. And they said, no, we want the men. So that's no seed. But in between the 2, we saw that there was an angel who was invisible, who attacked an unrelated seed. That was Job. And he made trips up and down the Jacob's ladder into heaven for the regular reconnaissance reports that angels give in the 3rd heaven. Okay? Now, let's just look at that just very quickly here with regard to this contrasting the dispensations. I purposely let the dispensation of law alone here. The reason that I did that is simply because law was added to promise. Law is a separate dispensation because there's new material added. But Paul says the law was added to promise. And so therefore I didn't include it here in our contrast. There are two dispensations that deal with the seed. In both of those dispensations, angels appeared as men. First of all, they appeared as men to corrupt. Secondly, they appeared as men to test. Here under the dispensation of conscience, the issue was human seed. Could God fulfill his promise with the seed of the woman? Here it was a dispensation after human government. Here was the issue. Could God fulfill his promise regarding the royal seed? Because Jesus Christ had to be born of a woman, but he also had to be the son of Abraham. And the homosexuals could have prevented this had they corrupted Isaac. There would have been no seed, no heir to the throne. But now, both before promise and then after promise, you have two other dispensations. During the dispensation of human government, God formed the nations. And he took one that was unrelated to the royal seed. Under the dispensation of human government, the seed is still there under the name of Shem. However, he took somebody that was unrelated to Shem for the most part, and his name was Job, an Arab. And one from among the nations witnessed in heaven. What did we see this morning? Satan went to the earth, walked up and down in it to see who believed, who disbelieved, and so forth. He came up to the regular meetings in the third heaven, and he would report there, and God would say, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And the dispensation of human government behind the scenes, everything in Genesis is talking about the Tower of Babel, and we'll get to that eventually. But here, it's one man who is tested of the devil. One man who in this dispensation breaks the maturity barrier all the way up to aristocrat. Remember, God does not allow you to be tempted above that you're able. Therefore, according to your spiritual maturity, that is the fallen angel that attacks you, that tests you. And when Job was tested by Lucifer himself, we know that he was an aristocratic Christian. He had maximum maturity, maximum saturation of doctrine in his human spirit. So, we have one from among the nations who witnessed in the heavens. Now, that dispensation, just like these two, have a connection. No angels were seen here, except as they tested Job invisibly and then went up to the third heaven for the report. It's the same thing in the dispensation of grace. You have not visibly seen an angel. But we know from the writings of Paul that there's angelic activity, isn't there? Absolutely. Ephesians, first part of the book, it says that we, to the intent that now the principalities and powers in heavenly places might be made known by the church, the manifold wisdom of God. In this dispensation, many from among the nations are just like Job, that one from among the nations who is witnessing to the beings in stellar space. They have regular reconnaissance reports given on their lives, just like Job did. Now, the thing is, just like Job was an unrelated seed to the royal seed of Israel, we are unrelated. We're not connected to Jesus Christ by virtue of our birth, by virtue of a covenant, by virtue of his promise. In fact, there is neither Jew nor Gentile when we get saved. And the point is that many from among the nations are teaching that we're going up into the third heaven and the stellar space to rule. One other thing with regard to this. In the dispensation of human government, what is the one outstanding object that we have here that was built? the Tower of Babel. And it says that that tower was built so its top might reach to the heavens. Now, we're not going to study that tonight. We're going to have to wait for a future time. However, just let me point out that that was a reflection of the stars. They worshiped the sun, the moon, the stars, the constellations. They named gods after them, and the whole Tower of Babel had its intent of bringing the heavens down to earth, of bringing the gods in the heavens down to earth so that they could worship them and bless them. But in the dispensation of grace, what does it show? Just the reverse. Of bringing those on earth to rule the heavens. It's just the reverse of the Tower of Babel. The nations built the Tower of Babel to try to bring the gods in the heavens, the fallen angels, down to earth. That's what the Tower of Babel was all about. It was a stargate, as it were, so that the angels would come down and they could have fellowship with them. However, the reverse is true in the dispensation of grace. What is God doing? He is taking many from among the nations, and he is going to put them in stellar space to rule. All right. Now we come to the dispensation of law. And in Psalm 68, you will notice that I have drawn the dispensation of law here without the break for grace. And the reason being is, prophetically, this is how the dispensation of law looked like. Prophetically, no one before the Apostle Paul knew that there would be a gap between the first coming of Christ and his mystery appearing, and then the removal of the church from earth. And so this is what it looked like, starting with Mount Sinai, ending with the coming of Jesus Christ at the end of this dispensation. That is basically what it looks like. Now, we live in what's called an intercalation, or simply a parenthesis, an insertion. It was a mystery. And God, between the resurrection of Christ and the tribulation, inserted at this point right here the dispensation of grace. However, this is what it was primarily to look like. And before the dispensation of the kingdom, it sees the most as far as visible angelic sightings are concerned. Now, let's start here with Mount Sinai. And we'll maybe make a few comments by way of contrast with the dispensation of grace. Who gave the law at Mount Sinai? All right, let me put it this way. Who gave the first 10 commandments? God. Who gave the rest of the law? Angels. Note, Psalm 68, verse number 17. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of angels. The Lord is among them as in Sinai in the holy place. Who was with God on Mount Sinai? Thousands and thousands of the hosts of angels. Now turn with me to Deuteronomy chapter 33. Deuteronomy chapter 33. And verse number 2. And he said, the Lord came from Sinai. He rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000s of saints. Now, again, this has to be a reference to the angels. How do we know? Simply because there was only one person at this time who was in heaven. In the dispensation of conscience, one man went up bodily into heaven. That man's name was Enoch. Any other believer that died went bodily to the grave, but soulishly where? To the center of the earth, Abraham's bosom. Okay, of course, in the dispensation of conscience, Abraham wasn't even there yet. It was simply known as paradise. So every other believer was there. Well, then who did he come with? Who were these tens of thousands of people? We just read it. They were angels. Now what did the angels do? Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7, verse 52. Which of the prophets have your fathers have not your fathers persecuted? They have slain them which showed before the coming of the just one, of whom ye have been now the betrayers and murderers, who have received the law by the disposition of angels, and have not kept it. If you will study the book of Exodus, you will see that God gave the first 10 commandments only. He wrote them with his finger in stone. The rest of the law was related. It was communicated by angels. Now, we're going to go to another. Well, let's do that. Let's go to Galatians chapter 3. Let's go to 2 more verses here with regard to this, and then we'll make a point of contrast. Galatians chapter 3. And verse 19. Wherefore then serves the law? It was added because of transgressions till the seed should come to whom the promise was made. And it was ordained by angels in the hand of a mediator. One more verse, but before we do that, I just want to point out that on Mount Sinai, God and angels began the dispensation of law. Angels are as much involved in this dispensation as anyone. They were with God in beginning the dispensation, in revealing the content of the revelation that men were to go by. Well, let's make our point of contrast now. When we get to the dispensation of law, were there any angels involved? Of grace. Were there any angels involved? Not one. Jesus Christ himself revealed to Paul. There wasn't one angel that came down and revealed to Paul anything. There was a dispensational contrast. Angels revealed what men were to follow in this dispensation. Jesus Christ himself revealed in toto everything that man was to believe in the dispensation of grace. When people accuse grace believers, you just follow the Apostle Paul. I follow Christ in what he said. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I want to say to them, who revealed to Paul his message for today? It was Jesus Christ. Therefore, if you follow Paul, you follow who? Jesus Christ. What Christ gave in his earthly ministry is not what we follow today. Jesus Christ said to follow Moses. Well, God gave to Moses 10 commandments himself. But who revealed the rest of the dispensation of law to men, to Moses, to Israel? Angels. What did Paul say? But though we or an angel preach any other message than that which we have received, let him be accursed. Angels do not reveal the dispensation of grace. Why? Because we rule angels. Because we take their place. Because we're teaching them something. We don't need to get 1 ounce of information from any angel in order to know what we're supposed to do in eternity future. We're going to rule over them, you see. And so therefore, Jesus Christ came back from heaven to earth and revealed to Paul what we're to follow today. Not one angel contributed 1 ounce of information for any believer in this dispensation. And yet we just read, and we'll read again, that angels were involved in 99.9 of the law in revealing it. Hebrews chapter 2. Hebrews chapter 2. I can see that I have put my hand to the plow, and I have broken new ground on foreheads of many people. You've not heard this before, huh? Well, that's good. Verse 1, Hebrews 2. Therefore we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard. Why? Let's go back to verse number 2 of chapter 1. God has in these last days spoken unto us by his Son. Hebrews 1:2 says, God in these last days has spoken to us by his Son. The dispensation of grace is an intercalation after the cross. We're living in a time of God's grace just before he pours out wrath. And therefore, he didn't speak to the world through angels. He spoke to the world through his Son. The first time that he spoke to the world in grace through his Son, aside from the obvious last part of law, was the dispensation of grace. Jesus Christ appeared to Paul, no angel. Now, verse number 1 of chapter 2. Give more earnest heed to these things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. Why? For if the word spoken by angels was steadfast, speaking of the law that they revealed to men, and every transgression and disobedience received a just recompense of reward, how shall we escape if we neglect so great a salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord? Okay? Who brought the revelation of law to men? Angels did, per se. God was involved in the first 10 only. Okay, now, therefore, because angels are involved in this, and because the law was added to promise, the royal seed, God also gives the angels a brand new assignment. Guess what they get to do? Because they are the heirs of salvation, the servants of the heirs of salvation, they get to be their guardians. Let's go to Psalms 34. Psalms 34. The concept of guardian angels has to do, first of all, with Jesus Christ in eternity past, where Lucifer, and undoubtedly, I'm saying this because I'm not exactly sure who it might have been, but undoubtedly it was Apollyon. Lucifer and Apollyon were the guardians of Jesus Christ. Just as the two angels came down subsequent and became men with Jesus Christ. Here was Christ talking to Abraham. The two men were two angels. At the Garden of Eden, you have the cross and the two angels. At the tomb, you have one angel on the feet of Jesus, the other angel at the head of Jesus. On and on we could go with these two angels. Why were they there? They were guarding his body so that no one could take it away. Just as Lucifer fought for the body of Moses. All right? Chapter 34 in the book of Psalms, which says, verse 7, the angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them. Point. You cannot claim that verse in the dispensation of grace. You cannot claim that verse in the dispensation of grace. You are not guarded by angels. You are guarded by someone who is more powerful, more omniscient, more effective in his protection than any angel could ever be. Just as Jesus Christ was the royal seed of Abraham and David, and he was as it were, ministered to by angels. I'll show you why he could not ask for angelic help. We in this dispensation cannot claim that verse of Scripture like that, where the angel of the Lord camps round about us. Now, do we have protection? Well, of course we do. Do we have the wall of fire and the hedge of prosperity around us? Of course we do. Those things are there, but they're there for different reasons. They're there not because there is an angel to make sure that they're there. Anytime you have somebody claiming that they are guardian angels, you have somebody going back under the dispensation of law to God's covenant people. It's Abraham's seed that will not disappear from the face of the earth. Your race, your roots are not promised perpetuity here on this planet. But Abraham's seed was, with your seed I'll make my covenant, and with Isaac and his seed for an everlasting covenant. A Jew will always be alive on the face of the earth. Therefore, Jews were given guardian angels. But you're not always going to be here on the face of the earth, are you? Unless you're left behind on the rapture. But that would be a big mistake. Big mistake. Psalms 91. Psalms 91. We'll start reading with verse number 9. Now, right after the angels gave the law, God gave a command for Israel to move out across the wilderness. Okay? And he said, I'm going to send my angel before you, and you're going to follow him to the promised land. And my angels are going to take care of you. We'll go to that promise here in just a little bit. So that it says, verse number 9, because you have made the Lord, because thou hast made the Lord, even which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou shalt dash thy foot against a stone. You'll tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon thou shalt trample under their feet. Have you ever wrestled a lion lately? Have you ever, faced a snake and, just stared him down, grabbed him, and squeezed the life out of him? They could. Why? Because of this promise. God sent them across the wilderness. Now, what is a group of people going to face in a wilderness where you've got about 100 miles between Egypt and southern Canaan land? What are you going to face in a wilderness? Scorpions, lack of water, lack of food, lions, and all the other type of wild beasts that are going to be hungry, and you're going to be defenseless against them. What did God say to them? I'm going to protect you in your ways. I command you to go from Egypt to the promised land across a desert. Now, mind you, they didn't know this territory. They had been down in Egypt for several hundred years. No one scouted it out. There wasn't going to be a 7-Eleven at every 25-mile stop so they could get water and food. There wasn't going to be that. Well, you want me to march over desert in the hot sun? Yeah. Well, how am I going to be taken care of? My angels are going to take care of you. God provided through this water. He provided manna, which is whose food? Angel food. In fact, the angels didn't even let their shoes or clothes wear out in their journey. The angels protected them. Now, that promise comes from Exodus 23. Exodus 23. And verse number 20. He has given the law, and the angel spoke, and then God said, behold, verse 20, Exodus 23. This is where Psalms 91 gets its quote. We learned from Psalms 91 that there was more than just one angel involved. His angels, plural. Though here the original promise said angel, a capital letter. Now, let me just quickly explain. We have not discussed much about the angel of the Lord. And there's a reason for that. The angel of the Lord is Jesus Christ. He is deity. He is not an angel except in the sense that he is the Lord of hosts and that he participates with angels in the universe. And therefore, as the Lord of hosts, he has said he's the angel of the Lord and he controls the Lord of hosts. Therefore, God says, I'm going to send the Lord of hosts, the angel of the Lord, to you, and his angels are going to keep you in your journey. Behold, I send an angel. The angel of the Lord is the reference here. That's why it's a capital A. Before you to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Therefore, Psalms 90 says, he is going to give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your journeys. The word way there is journey. Well, the first journey they were to take was from Egypt to the promised land across a wilderness, a barren, threatening wilderness. How were they all going to get there unharmed? They had guardian angels. Okay, now with the time remaining, let's note this concept from Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4. Verse number 5. The temptation of Christ, the angelic conflict, and why Jesus Christ could not have the help of angels. Guess what? He was there on Mount Sinai. He gave the law. He was the angel of the Lord to lead them out. The Lord of hosts, he led all the angels in protecting. But when he became a man, what was the one thing that he could not have without failing in the angelic conflict? That is a guardian angel. He could not have angels to so protect him from Lucifer or any of the other struggles of life that he was coddled. He had to face life without angelic help, with the exception of 2 times. And we won't have time for that tonight, I don't think. But verse number 5 says, he is strictly dependent upon the Holy Spirit and the Word against the devil. The devil took him up to the holy city, set him on the pinnacle of the temple. And he said to him, if you be the Son of God, cast thyself down. It's written, he'll give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou shalt dash thy foot against a stone. He quoted Scripture, didn't he? Didn't Jesus Christ want to obey Scripture? I mean, after all, what better way to get a crowd than just simply to jump off a 450-foot cliff in front of all the people who had been around the temple, and the angels come in a daring rescue, whoosh, catching him up and just landing him gently on his feet. You know, talk about a cat always falling on its feet. Just gently. Didn't even dash his foot against the stone. Didn't even stub his toe. Why didn't Jesus do it? Because Lucifer misquoted the verse. He took it out of context and he left one thing out. To keep thee in all thy ways. Remember? He'll give his angels charge concerning thee to keep thee in all thy ways. What ways? They were the ways God commanded. Go from Egypt to the wilderness across the desert, and my angels will protect you and provide your every need. But did God say with this supernatural power, just go up to Mount Sinai and jump off the cliff and have a good old time? That angels are going to supernaturally catch you in a bungee jump, and boy, what a rush. You know, off the cliff, the angels caught me. He did not. He said that I have sent you from this point to the promised land, and these are the ways you're to go. And when you're in my will, my angels are going to protect you. My angels are going to provide for you. And he took that verse right out of context. And Jesus Christ, he never told me to jump off the temple. He told me to stay in the center of his will. And then the angels, that's the angelic conflict. Is it not written again, says Jesus Christ, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. You can't take his word out of context, make it to mean something he never meant it to mean, and then at the same time expect him to provide protection for you in accordance with this word. All right? Where are we? Perhaps I'd like to know. No, we're in the dispensation of law. And where we are at this particular point is angels gave the revelation of the law. In contrast to grace, no angel took part. We do not follow the word given by angels, except as Paul includes this in his revelation for us. There was some inclusion of that, of course. God gave the command to march into enemy territory, into hostile circumstances, and his angels would protect them. This is the concept of the guardian angel. But Jesus Christ was tested at this point in the angelic conflict. And of course, he did not fall. And this here, he is tested in the wilderness and did not fall. Now, I got a little ahead of myself because there are still some angelic sightings between the wilderness journey and the temptation of Christ. In fact, we have 1,000 and some odd years.